Hello and welcome to The Final Frontiersman, a YouTube channel about all things Trek. I'm Bill, and today is a very long overdue review of a Star Trek board game that I've wanted to talk about for a very long time. This is Star Trek Catan. And because this is going to be a review video, we have our alert system. Yellow alert for the things of interest that we want to point out. Red alerts for the things we think are great. And the rarely used black alerts for the things that are groundbreaking and game-changing. So let's talk about this board game, Star Trek Catan. I will jump into the small window. Let's do this. So Star Trek Catan is a Star Trek retheming of the classic, modern classic board game Settlers of Catan, also known as Settlers, also known as just Catan, not known as just of yet. But anyhow, this game, Settlers, the original one, Settlers of Catan, it's about almost 30 years old now. The idea behind the game of Settlers, if you are not familiar, is you have a board constructed of hexagonal tiles. Could be predetermined, could be random, but the idea is that every player in the game is trying to build settlements and cities by collecting resources and building roads to try stretch across the map. You're gaining points along the way of doing that. Every settlement that you build or upgrade to a city will give you points, and you're collecting resources such as grain or brick, wool, and one more that escapes me for the time being. But that is the original Settlers of Catan. This is Star Trek Catan. It is the exact same gameplay as Catan, but it has a Star Trek theme put on top of it, as well as one little addition that is not in the original Catan board game. So I think that addition is what makes this a step above Catan, the original Catan, and makes this the one version of the game that I want to play. Honestly, truthfully speaking, Settlers of Catan I think is a very good game. I think it's a very good gateway game. Again, it's about 30 years old now, but it's a good introduction to modern board gaming. A lot of people still have it in their minds that board games just like rolling the dice, moving the pawn around, similar to Monopoly and the like. But many of you out there know that board games are huge these days, and especially they've grown so much since the original Settlers has come out. But for people who are not familiar, it is a very good gateway game of introducing you to a wider world and a wider style of board games. So for that, I think Catan is great. But personally, I don't really like it that much as just for a game day. If there, I'm a very big board gamer, and before STA came out and I got a role-playing game group back together for first time ages, I was all about board gaming for many years. Catan, I played. It's great, it's solid, it has its problems, as do many games, but it's a really good game that's easy for everyone to pick up, and there are some elements that I really like, and I'm going to talk about that here. But the Star Trek version is my favorite version of the game, and if you have played the original Settlers of Catan, and maybe you think the same thing, like, it's okay, but I don't really care for it, or maybe you don't like it, you had a bad experience, stick with me. There's a reason why I think this is a better version. So let's jump into it. Gameplay is exactly the same. You have your hexagonal board, constructed the hexagonal tiles. You start in random or predetermined places, depending on if you're playing the beginner's game or you're doing it randomly. And you'll have each world. Each world is on the hex with an asteroid field in the center of the board. Each world has a different color that represents one of the resources. The blue world gives water. The white world gives oxygen. The yellow world gives food. The green world gives dilithium. And the red worlds give tritanium, I believe it's it. So those are the 5 resources of the game. You'll have a little card that is given to you, which will tell you what resources you need to spend if you want to build something. In the original Settlers, it was building roads, building was it outposts or outposts? No, settlements, and then you could upgrade those to cities. In this one, you're building supply routes, and you use little enterprise ships to create the supply routes instead of building roads in the original Settlers. Instead, the settlements, you build an outpost, which is a headless starbase, and then the big cities in this game is a starbase. You put the little cap on top of it, and that's a starbase. The goal is to get to 10 points. You get 1 point for every outpost you build, 2 points for every starbase that it's turned into. You can have only 5 outposts at one time, and then if you build a starbase, you could get up to 2 more outposts out. So you could have maybe a maximum of 4 starbases, and then I think you would have 3 outposts there. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. That would be enough to get you to 10 points and over if you can build that. Now, here's the problem. Here's how you get the resources. Every junction that you have your outpost or starbase built at touches a number of planets. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. These planets all get a number token put on top of them, ranging from 2 to 12. You'll roll 2 dice every turn. So when your turn starts, step 1, you roll 2 dice, and whatever total of those 2 dice come up, those planets, or that one planet, depending on what it is, that 1 to 2 planets that share that number will generate resources for every outpost or starbase that is touching it. So that's how you get the resources. If you have a starbase in the junction between a white planet and the red planet, the white planet has a 6 on it, you roll 2 dice, you roll a 3 and a 3, that's a 6. That will give you 1 resource, or if it's starbase, 2 resources. So you're collecting resources and you're looking at your chart. What can you buy? You build supply lanes, you can build a new outpost, or you can buy development cards. Development cards give you something a little bit special, maybe a little bonus ability, or they might allow you to play multiple starships down at one time to extend your supply line. Why would you want to keep doing that if you could just build the star bases in that? Well, because there's also 2 additional bonus point cards. They give you 2 victory points, which is pretty massive. The player who has the longest line of starships, the longest supply line, gets the longest supply line card, which is 2 victory points. It starts at 5. So whoever gets 5 starships in the row first gets that card. To get it taken away, you have to get more than whoever has the card currently. So if that player had 5 and then they got 2 more starships in the line, so it's a 7 line. If you want to take that away, you need to create a line with 8 starships and you'll take that card away. Another bonus, point 1, comes from the development cards. Some of the development cards are called Starfleet Intervenes, I believe. First player to have 3 of them played down in front of them takes the, what was it called? Turns out the card's called Longest Starfleet or Largest Starfleet. So whoever gets the first 3 cards on the table in front of them from the deck saying Starfleet Intervenes takes that Starfleet Intervenes card. So then if you want to take that from them, you have to play more than that. So those are chances of bonus points. Sometimes development cards will just give you 1 victory point. As soon as you get up to 10 points on your turn, you win. So that's how it plays. It's really simple, but there's a couple tricky elements in there. Number 1 is there is, in the original game, a thief. In this game, it's a Klingon. The Klingon starts in the asteroid field in the center. If a 7 is rolled, then instead there's no planet with a 7, the Klingon activates. And what happens is a couple of bad things. First, if you have more than 7 cards in your hand, you're forced to discard half of your hand. Not down to 7. If you have more than 7, you have to discard half of what you have. And then you move the Klingon. It doesn't matter whoever rolls the dice, anyone that has more than 7 cards, I should say. So then whoever rolled the 7 gets to move the Klingon, and they put it on any planet. So the planet they put it on, let's say it's a number 6 on that planet is now blocked from generating resources. If a 6 comes up, that planet won't give anything to any player that's touching that planet. The other 6 will, but the planet the Klingon is on will not. Now, there's one more thing that happens. Once the Klingon lands on one of those planets, one of the players that are touching that planet, any of the players that are touching a planet, whoever placed the Klingon there gets to steal one random resource card from the hand of one of the players touching the planet. So there's a little bit of strategy there. If you roll 7, you get to determine which resource you're going to be blocking potentially if the number comes up. But you have to think which players are also around that planet. Those are the ones you would be able to steal a card from. So there's a little bit of strategy, but there's a lot of randomness in the game because it's all dice based. In the game that we played recently, 6, 8, those are numbers that should be rolled frequently. 2 should not be rolled very often because there's only, you gotta roll snake eyes, 1 and 1 to get it. But we rolled 2 more often. I believe we only rolled 8 like once in the entire game, and we rolled a 2 3 times during the game. So there's a lot of randomness in there. And that's kind of one of the problems of this game from the original Settlers on, is the randomness. If your planets that your outposts and your starbase are connected to do not get rolled, you are not going to get any of the resources that you need. You are going to be sitting there with a very small hand of cards, not knowing what to do. But there's ways around that. And that's the second step. After you roll the dice, second step is you can trade. And this is what I like about the game, and I'm giving this a yellow alert. This is one of the things I like most about board games, the ones I play, is the social element, the negotiation element, the diplomacy element. This game has that. You get to offer trades with other players. Say, I will give you this if you give me that. You could try make promises, gentlemen's agreements, try to get something, do favors to get the resources you need to build. But of course, you're all working against each other, so they know that whatever they give you is going to be helping you, so they are going to want something in return that's going to help them very much as well. I love this aspect of the game, and it could get into some really fun, animated, tense negotiations. This is probably my favorite element of the game, is the negotiation. And then the third step of the turn is the building. That's when you spend your resources and you build your supply lines, your outposts, your starbase, or you buy your development cards. Now, the next major problem, which stems off of the original major problem I said, is if you're not getting cards, you can't build anything. If your numbers aren't coming up because the randomness is not working for you with the dice, you're not getting all the resources you need. And what happens if other players do not want to, or they cannot trade with you? You don't have anything they need, and they don't just want to give you anything for charity. You could be stuck. There's really not much you can do, and that is a huge drawback of this game. It might take you a long time before you're in the game and actually able to build. Meanwhile, the rest of the players are just rushing ahead and achieving their goals. Well, that is why I prefer Star Trek Catan to the original version. And this is what is getting the red alert. The support characters, the support cards in this. This game contains cards representing characters from the Star Trek franchise, the Star Trek motion picture era franchise. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Sulu, Chekhov, Rand, Nurse Chapel, Sarek. Who else is there? I think there was someone else too, but it has the range of characters from the original series motion picture era. And these characters, when the game starts, you each get one. It tells you in the rulebook how to determine which one you start with. And they grant you special abilities that you could use on your turn. What happens, for example, Spock, if the dice are rolled, no matter whose turn it is, if the dice are rolled and you don't get any resources from that roll, you could use Spock's power that he gives you to take any one resource that you want. Rand, for example, if you have Janus Rand on your turn, you could trade any 2 of one resource that you have in exchange for another resource. So anywhere, anytime, you don't have to be at a trading outpost, which are in the game. You could just give 2 dilithium and take an oxygen if you need it by using Rand's ability. So these cards give you ways, give you chances, give you a whole lot of variety to get out of being stuck. As well as, if you're not stuck, give you an extra boost of tactics, of strategy to achieve the goal you want. This is something that's missing from the original Settlers of Catan. I believe it was later implemented as an expansion you could buy and add into the game called Helpers of Catan, perhaps. I believe it's called Helpers. But that is here in the box. One of the guys I played with, he is a huge fan of Settlers of Catan. He plays it frequently. In fact, 2 of them play it together frequently. But one of them, not only a Star Trek fan, but also a very big Catan player. He said he loved these cards more because it made the game go faster, and it also prevented that situation where you're just stuck and completely unable to do anything. This gives you options. What's better is you have the card. When you use the ability, you can only use it once on turn. You have the choice of either flipping it over to the other side, which allows you to keep it for one more use, same ability, or you trade it in and you can take any of the other remaining characters in the pool. So as the game goes along, all these characters are cycling and you're able to plan which character you want to take next, as long as somebody else doesn't snatch it before you. So you could use the ability once, turn it in, or keep it twice. After the second time, you must exchange it and get a new character, a new support card to help you. I love this. I love it so much. Not only is it adding the characters that we love from Star Trek into the game, which is exactly what I want as a Star Trek fan, but it takes away that negative element that always kept Catan from being just the kind of game I want to play. It could be here, but was always down here because there was always that chance that you would get stuck. You have nothing to do and you're at the mercy of the dice and the other player's whims to get back into the game, and it doesn't always work that way. The support cards make you always have an option. Now, there's also a chance you might draw a bad card that you think you're going to need, and it turns out like, okay, this is not the card I want, and you might be stuck with that character for a while until you could find a way to use them and get rid of them. That option is still there, but that is a much slimmer possibility than just getting shut out by the dice in the regular base game. And that's why Star Trek Catan ranks much higher for me than Settlers of Catan. So stand down, Red Alert. Overall, I think this game is fun. It's great. I had it for a few years, but I haven't played for a long time. To do this review, I finally broke out, got it with my group. We played it, as I said, with a huge Catan fan, and it was a good time. We had a blast around the table. Now, this is Star Trek Catan, but this is not really a Star Trek game. As I talked about in earlier videos, especially like Buffer Time recently, this is just a theme of Star Trek put on top of mechanics, but you know, it's still fun, it's still good, and you get the Star Trek visuals, you get the Star Trek, the little taste, the little theme of Star Trek bleeding through onto what is already a solid game that has withstood, I should say, the test of time for 30 years now as a great introductory game to the bigger world of board gaming. So if you're not really into modern board gaming, if you don't really know what it is, and you're a Star Trek fan, this is a great way to get into it. If you want to introduce board gaming to some Star Trek fans that you know, this is also a very easy, rules light game that anyone could jump into, anyone can grasp. Star Trek Catan. Let me go back to the large window. So I love the game. again, it's not a Star Trek game, but it's a Star Trek theme on tried and true game system that has stood the test of time. It's well worth looking into. Gameplays, probably if you have 4 players, expect maybe around 3 hours or more, depending on how much downtime and thinking and how familiar people are with the game. You could probably play it faster. As I said, the guy I played with who is into Catan says this plays much faster thanks to those support cards, giving you different avenues out of any jam that you might be in and more options to get your strategy completed. If you want to see what the game is like, it was featured a few years back on TableTop on YouTube, starring Will Wheaton. That was his show. Wesley Crusher himself, Will Wheaton, had his board game show. I will link down below to the videos, provided they're still there, which I believe they are. I will link down below to both the shortened version and the full extended version of the game. You can watch it play. I believe Jeri Ryan79 also guest starred on that episode and played with him. It's a fun episode. It's a fun game. You could see what it's like, see it for yourself. But if you have a chance, I recommend you try it. And again, it's a good gateway board game into the larger world, because I have a feeling that coming up in a few more reviews of some board games here, there's going to be some massively complicated modern board games of Star Trek I want to introduce to you. So if you're not familiar with these kind of games yet, this is a good way to get your foot inside the turbo lift door and get ready for some of the big Star Trek stuff that's coming up soon. So if you played Star Trek Catan, what do you think about it? Do you like it? Do you have any opinions on the game, the original game, the Star Trek game, the support cards themselves? Any house rules, whatever, anything you have of interest that you want to share, I want to hear it. So please type down below in the comments and get to me on social media, wherever I might be existing these days, or just send me an email. But thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you are excited about getting into board games as much as I am. Star Trek role-playing, Star Trek board games, everything Star Trek. I love it. I want to share the stuff that I think is great with you. And if you try this out, I hope you have a good time. Check down below for all the links that might help you with this. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there, my friends. Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. See you.